way I look at it is this. First off, I'm starting to come to the conclusion that it's probably best to equate consciousness with experience and not as any kind of an object. So I think there's safety anyway in saying, well, what if consciousness is just experience? It's not a thing. And so here I am using language, calling it this and this and this and that. Well, it's just the experience of observing. So I think, to answer your question, I think really basically consciousness is memory, and that means consciousness is thought. I have this conviction that it's probably safest to say consciousness is simply thought, but specifically memory, which means, again, knowledge, right? Now, awareness can lead to knowledge, though. You can be watching something, and then that becomes something that becomes part of what you know, I suppose. Now, we're discounting the whole experience of sensation. So there's this flow, perception, sensation, knowledge.
When you say memory, are you sort of referencing, or at least do you think about it in a way that consciousness is memory by virtue of the fact that everything that we could know is just kind of based on something like some antecedent cause?
Yeah, I like, again, I'm trying to be very careful in my old age with using language precisely. I'm trying to get comfortable in my own head with what makes sense to me. So for me these days, reality itself, let's talk about reality, is simply what we think about. Now that's a huge, broad definition. Reality is what we think about. And you could be thinking about a tree. You could be thinking about a unicorn. You see, now, in my definition, a unicorn is still real because it's something I'm thinking about. So reality is what I think about. Now, I like to make a distinction between reality and truth. I like to think that truth is not necessarily, I'll put it this way, truth might be transcendent of reality, what I think about. I like to keep this open. There's what I think about, which is consciousness, which is past thoughts and memory, right? There's that. But I'm also a big fan of believing that life is also grounded in a mystery. Flat out, like you were making allusion to. It's, mystery is fundamentally the ground of life, cosmos, mystery. But there could be the possibility of truth existing separate from thought, right? So truth with a capital T. I don't mean opinion. This is the big fight that Socrates had with the sophists in ancient Greek philosophy. Back then, it's kind of like today's world where everybody's walking around with their own truth, and then we spin the truth. Politicians spinning the truth. Well, that might be your truth, but So we get this from Washington D.C. People spinning the truth. Well, back in ancient Greece, that's what the sophists were doing. It drove Socrates crazy. He's like, no, truth can't just be opinion. There's got to be truth with a capital T. It's there. It's ontologically real. So I think that's an important distinction, to leave open the possibility that there's what we think about, which is thought, memory. Again, you have an experience, and then it becomes knowledge. Then there's more, so that becomes past knowledge. So we're always living in memory. We're always living in thoughts. We're always living in what we're thinking about. Thoughts. I shouldn't say what we're thinking about. We're living in thought. But there's still truth with a capital T, and I'd like to suggest that somehow that I leave open the possibility that that's there. And so what I mean is, I think humans have the possibility of freeing themselves from thought, freeing themselves from what they call consciousness currently. And there might be more out there than what we think, so there could be the possibility that there's more to what we're calling right now consciousness. You follow?
Yeah, but if consciousness is thought, then does that leave out everything that can be experienced away from thought? Because does that leave out experiences that you can't experience yourself subjectively outside of thought? I guess this kind of, you can take this as like a solipsistic view. Like if I completely think that the only experience of consciousness is my own self, and the only thing that we can think about is my own thought, that if consciousness is thought, then that leaves out others' thoughts.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, no, yeah, don't make it individual. Mm-hmm. No. In fact, I wanted to come back to this. We're touching on this earlier. We were talking about the self. And again, most people think that there's a thinker called the self having thoughts. But if there's no self,
Yeah.
so what I wanted to stress here is what if the thinker itself is simply another thought? I mean, that's basically where Buddhism goes. There's a discovery that there's no self because the self is simply a thought. So, but we think it's a thinker having thoughts.
Yeah.
But what if there's no thinker having thoughts? There's just thought that creates the thinker, and then that thinker separates itself from thought. I mean, that's basically what I see happening all the time. There's no thinker having thoughts. There's simply thought creating the thinker, and then that thinker separates itself from thought. Now, when that sinks in, the first thing you notice is there's no room for an individual. It's just pure. When I said thought, I meant thought. Just human thought across the board. There's no your thoughts and my thoughts.